Well, Matthias, automation comes with boundless opportunities.
Well, Ollie, yes and no, because there is a bunch of obstacles that you need to know and you need to tackle before you can really start a successful automation project. And this is why the second episode is going to be all about the top obstacles for automation.
Automation Awakenings, your weekly dose of best practices for logistics automation.
Welcome to the second episode of our Automation Awakenings podcast, and I welcome you, Matthias, to the show.
Thank you so much, Ollie, and thanks to all our listeners who are joining for this podcast. Happy to have you on board and really looking forward to this very interesting episode on a very basic topic of automation, which is the obstacles.
Yeah, last time we were talking about why you should automate. And of course, nothing is easy. Everything comes with risks and obstacles. And today we will talk about them. And, it's always better to know them before starting.
Correct. Because that's your best guarantee to really make sure you tackle them beforehand, you clear the path. And then once you start with your automation initiative, you can really successfully and smoothly end it. And this is why we think it is important to talk about these topics.
All right, Matthias. Then I would like to ask you, thinking about obstacles in automation, what is, from your point of view, the number one?
Well, same as with the reasons for automation, I would say money.
Again, money.
Yes, it's everywhere, and it's also part of the obstacles, because of course you have to invest money, you have to invest capital to do automation projects. In other words, you need to invest money to save money, right? And that's a thing that some people do not understand, or some people simply cannot afford, which from my experience is a big showstopper in many of the initiatives that we have seen.
Especially for smaller companies, right?
Correct. So the companies which really have to put together the bills to pay the project, and who maybe do not have the leverage or the capital to wait for the return on invest to kick in after, say, 1.5, 2 years, right? And this is a huge problem, which is then also quite often combined with a low confidence in technology, I would say. So you don't have a lot of money, right? So you don't have a lot of capital to be invested. And then in addition to this, you're also a bit doubting if this technology is really, the right thing to pick, if this technology will really help you and, materialize in a nice return on invest. And that's something that I think is probably number one reason or number one obstacle for automation projects. So there might be good ideas, there might be really nice use cases, but simply the management or whoever is the sponsor is not really convinced and doesn't really have the funding.
And unfortunately, also here, the initial step is the most difficult one, I think. If you have no experience with automation, as you said, you are not confident about the technology.
Yeah.
Even though you know that you could save some money because, you can automate a certain transport or a certain process, first of all, you need to buy equipment, software, additional stuff before this automation really kicks off.
Yeah.
And always, you need to wait some time until you see the money, really being saved.
Yeah, correct. And you're actually already touching the second point I noted down. So I think there is a lot of obstacles that kind of arise from a certain lack of experience with automation. So one of the obstacles, of course, is this fact that companies or deciders would really struggle to have a vision, to have an eye for potential use cases in their plant, simply because they never done it. They know the neighboring company is doing it, but they haven't done it themselves, and they simply lack the experience to see use cases, to see those benefits also coming back to them. So that's one problem from this experience cluster. And another one is that many deciders also lack the awareness that it's not only about buying automation hardware like mobile robots and then, job is done, you're going to save a lot of money. They do not understand that you also have to actually change and adapt your processes and workflows to make sure that you can really implement automation hardware to use it to the max and to really gain the benefits out of it. And this again, I think is a really big lack of experience which we see here, and which is leading to simply the abortion of whatever automation ideas there might be in this organization.
Yeah, I would extend this lack of experience to safety concerns, because usually you have your safety engineer in your plant, and also he or she has no experience with mobile robots or automation.
Yeah.
And usually what people tend to do, if they have no experience, they have a lot of concerns and they see risks everywhere.
Yep.
And sure, we have to address the safety topics, but this should not be a criteria to stop the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this happens sometimes. Like people just say, I don't want to have any robot in my workplace because it's not safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, arguing against safety experts is a quite tough
Very
thing
difficult.
to do. We both know it from experience. And it's really an obstacle, and an obstacle you shouldn't underestimate, I would say. But maybe coming back to the experience topic still. So what I think is another lack of experience which might jeopardize an automation projects already in the early stage is the fact that a lot of companies who are not experienced with automation, they are really struggling to translate their requirements into a specification book, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So they might have a great vision, then they go to a fair or they visit some providers, but they're really having a hard time to express what they really want to get out of this automation technology, how they want to use it. And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, they're hesitating. They don't feel super comfortable being surrounded by salespeople. They think, okay, they just try to sell something to them.
Yeah.
And I think this gap where the deciders or the company are not able to really specify clearly what they want to get and, write it down in a list or in a specification book and discuss it directly with a provider, this is really adding a lot to this uncertainty, which is then, jeopardizing the automation projects in early stages already.
And these things are happening in practice. I couldn't believe, but there are projects kicking off without any specification book, or a very basic one. Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
I've
seen that.
Yeah, they only write something like, we need to automate the transport from A and B, and it should be done within a time frame of, 10 minutes or so. And the project should be finished within March.
Yeah.
And the specification book consists of 3 sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So-
and then it's clear that
Madness.
something must go wrong. But this
Yeah.
is experience from practice.
Yeah, I totally agree. Been there, seen that. Not too often, thanks God, but I've seen that. And really strong message goes out to all our listeners. Guys,
Please.
make sure you have a specification book in place.
A proper one.
A proper one, okay? Because otherwise, basically, whatever the provider or the supplier does is fine, right? And the worst thing is when you sign off basically the project, and then afterwards you find out that something is not really, matching, something is not really working the way you intended it to do because you didn't really know, you didn't specify it in a specification book. You're screwed, because you signed it off. The provider has done the job, which you guys agreed on in a sales contract, for example, and then you're left with your problems, or you have to pay extra money to get it fixed. So please make sure the specification book is in place.
Yeah, or you will have a very nice story for the next screw-up night.
Exactly, right. So if you are having something like that, then of course make sure you go this way, because it's almost guarantee for a screwed up automation project.
So what else can I screw up in automation project, Matthias?
Yeah, I think that complexity is a big topic.
Process-wise, or
Yeah,
what do you mean?
There is different aspects to complexity. So what we face also a lot when we go and visit customers that do not have a lot of experience with automation is that they tend to try to always start with the most complex possible use case. So one of the favorite use cases apparently is loading and unloading of trucks.
Yeah, I don't know why this always happens.
It's the absolute Champions League use case for automation, because technology is not yet there to really provide such a, let's say, stable functionality. And people totally forget to really look into things like floor-to-floor transports of pallets, which happens everywhere, every day. That's in most of the cases, this is basically neglected, and people would really go and tackle the things that maybe also that create the biggest pain in their organization. And that's, in most of the cases, that's the really Champions League use cases, which is not really wise to do.
Yeah, I think this is an illness of industry environments, because who is leading projects in these environments? Usually engineers. And engineers love technology.
Yeah.
That's good. On the other hand, they love to tackle most complex processes with most complex technology or solutions.
Yeah, that's an interesting thesis, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And on the other hand, for sure, it's not the best project to start with automation.
Yeah, so this is one part of the complexity cluster that I see. And the second one that I see is that obviously most of the automation use cases are realized in brownfield environments, right? So you have an existing warehouse or an existing manufacturing site. You want to bring in some automation technologies there. And that leads to certain decisions, certain investments, certain also aspects that you need to remember when you introduce this new technology to a brownfield environment, which means you have to think about your periphery. Like, do I have Wi-Fi everywhere?
Yeah.
Do I need to fix the floors, on the shop floor to ensure that robots can move there? Do I need to train my manufacturing department to do machine relocations in a different way, scheduled relocations, not, like a day-to-day decision relocations that happen a lot. So there is also a lot of training and mindset that is adding to this complexity topic, and which I think is an obstacle for sure, because you have to think about a lot of things especially in a brownfield environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I would summarize this under the headline lack of standardization.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this goes towards
totally
process standards.
Yeah.
And I can repeat my nice sentence from the first episode: automation has no mercy. And automation has no mercy towards your processes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have hiccups already today, they will get worse. I can promise you. When starting an automation project, and this goes beyond your processes, and it goes towards the big software topic.
Correct.
Yeah, in a heterogeneous software environment, starting some automation integration project can quickly lead to a nightmare.
Yep, totally agree. So complexity and lack of standards is definitely a big topic. And just have one last saying for you on that. And it goes like, if you automate a shitty process, you're going to get a shitty automated process, right?
Yeah, wonderful.
So make sure you do your homework and keep complexity low so that your automation project is really a success. Okay, moving on, I have another one, which is, I think, also quite obvious to all of you guys who are now step by step moving into the automation topic. The technology selection, so the offer or the supply of automation technologies is super fragmented. So I've seen a number on the web, which is about AGV or AMR vendors, so mobile robot vendors, and obviously we have 500 plus vendors worldwide.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy. And now, of course, if you are someone who just started into the topic, or who maybe has something else as a major job and is just doing automation as a side project, he will struggle a lot to really find the right technology provider for his particular use case and for his particular need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just impossible. Yeah, you will be overwhelmed immediately going to an exhibition, talking to the sales people. Every robot has its special features.
Yeah. And then, and this is another topic which I also think is an obstacle, is that there is not too many of these end-to-end solution providers across the globe, So you have them in certain areas, say Europe or China or maybe the US. So you have some strong companies there, but then there is not too many players that could provide you the same product portfolio, the same service portfolio, the same support network like across the globe. So if you're a big company or a company with, with locations all across the globe, you will struggle with this because you're going to need another supplier for your Australia location, then you're going to need for your France location, and you're going to need for your Brazil location, right? So this is also one of the obstacles that might jeopardize your automation project, I feel at least.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, every automation responsible from a multinational enterprise would love to have such a partner automating end-to-end everything.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't have it. Maybe yet. Yeah, let's see. Well, Matthias, if you would ask me what is my most important obstacle, and I think it's the most, from my point of view, the most obvious, but most ignored and neglected obstacle.
We forgot it the whole time, so I'm really looking forward to hear it.
Yes, and this is the human being. Yeah, if I tell you that you should think of change management during your automation project, you will nod your head and say, yes, of course, that's my main concern.
Yeah.
But I think you would agree that we've seen it way too often, that this sentence is only written somewhere on a PowerPoint slide.
Yeah.
But during the project, the human factor is forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
agree.
have a workforce of operators, team leads, shift leaders. They will be impacted by your project a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe their whole role will change. Maybe you have to qualify them. Maybe you have to transfer them to a different position, job, role, whatever.
Agree.
And if you really want to spoil the project, then just ignore them and just give them new tasks after you finish the project.
And they're going to make sure to sabotage your robots, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, Oli. Happy that you brought it up. I think change management and really also people management in this matter is super important. It's probably the key obstacle to successfully and long and implement it for long term, so to say, right? So that's for sure. And maybe one last before we do the summary. So I think maybe goes also into your direction a bit. I think moral issues maybe also, right? So let's say you're the decider, you're owner of a company, and then, you have these guys working there for 10, 15, 20 years, and now you're considering to replace their jobs with, say, a mobile robot, right? And you might feel bad about eliminating these jobs because, of course, maybe you feel bad about the change management that you need to do before you can really implement, but maybe also because you just like the people and you're having this wrong fear that they might end up on the street,
Yeah, exactly.
So as we discussed in the first episode, out of our experience, that's something that is not too valid, let's say. I mean, there's going to be these cases for sure, but I think both me and Ollie believe and also seen in practice that people who get, or people whose tasks get replaced by a mobile robot, for example, can totally be retrained to do other activities in the plant, which might be even more rewarding and simply just a better job for this person. So that's maybe my ending words for today's episode.
All right, perfect, Matthias. Thank you. Then I think we can come to our summary. And we were talking today about obstacles for automation projects. And we started with the big topic of missing money.
Correct. So costs as always. And then we continued with the topic of complexity. So picking the most complex use case in the beginning and also basically managing all the changes in a brownfield environment that you need to really implement automation technologies.
Yeah, we also touched the topic of lack of standardization, which goes along with complexity, integrating automation projects into existing software environments, as well as process environments. And of course, lack of experience, which goes somewhere also with the lack of standards, but I would even also tailor it more towards the fear of new, right? Which we have, and which then is also let's say added or enlarged by the fact that the offer or the supply of these technologies is really fragmented, really huge. You have 500 plus vendors out there, and it's a huge jungle to really find your way and to select the right provider for you. Yeah, and we closed the discussion talking about moral topics, about the human being in the middle of all these change projects. and about change management and resisting factors.
Correct. So that's been all for today's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know in case you guys have experienced other obstacles in your projects that we haven't mentioned. We are really curious to hear about them. You can interact with us on LinkedIn. So make sure you follow us, or let's say our page, which is Automation Awakenings on LinkedIn. And of course, we are warmly inviting you to listen to our next episode being released next Monday on all available platforms.
Yeah, and there we're going to talk about automation technologies in general and what is available there.
Very interesting. So make sure you join. Take care and hear you soon.
Looking forward.
Bye-bye.
This was another episode of the Automation Awakenings podcast. Visit us at automation-awakenings.com.